Fil-programm tal-lum u oħrajn segwenti se niltaqgħu ma' leġenda tad-baħħir, raġel li sar l-ewwel persuna li baħħar waħdu u bla waqfien madwar id-dinja. Dan hu Sir Robin Knox Johnston. Fi kliemu stess, Sir Robin jispjega l-istorja wara l-kisba epika tiegħu aktar minn 50 sena ilu. Nisimgħu lil leġendi oħra bħal Ben Ainsley, Alex Thompson, Chris Bonington u Dika Fari dwar kif Sir Robin ikompli jaspira lil ħaddieħor billi jimbotta lilu nnifsu sal-limit tiegħu u jkun iżjed avventurus. F'dawn il-programmi se nħarsu lura lejn il-ħajja notevoli tiegħu, il-karriera, il-wirt u l-mod kif l-influenza tiegħu affettwa dan l-isport.
Must be a tremendous moment for a man who's obviously loving every second of today's sail. Any second now, the black rock beacon stretching out across the water from Tenderness Point will come into view just on the left of your picture. And the cannon is gone. The cannon has gone. The hooters, the horns, the salute. Day 312, about 25 past 3 on April the 22nd. And Robin Knox Johnston and Sue Haley have sailed non-stop around the world.
So Robin Knox Johnston is probably the most determined, most stubborn, most interesting person I've ever met in my entire life.
To me, Sir Robin Knox Johnston is an iconic figure and one of the greatest sailors to have ever set foot in a boat.
The thing that made Robin stand out so much at the time was that he wasn't well known, he wasn't famous. He was an ordinary chap who'd built his own boat and done something that nobody on earth had ever done before through sheer guts and drive and determination.
He created that first non-stop sail around the world that nobody thought was possible, hadn't been done until he completed it. And he's laid that pathway for all of us to follow.
Fit-22 ta' April tal-1969, Robin Knox Johnston, uffiċjal fin-Navy Ingliża, sar l-ewwel persuna fl-istorja biex jibaħħar madwar id-dinja bla waqfien u waħdu. Huwa beda l-avventura tiegħu f'Lulju tal-1968 billi telaq minn Falmouth fil-beach tal-Ingilterra u rritorna hemm wara 312 jum ta' solitudni. Mar-ritorn tiegħu wieħed seta' jinduna li kien raġel mibdul kemm fiżikament kif ukoll mentalment. Sir Robin kien wettaq xi ħaġa li dak iż-żmien in-nies ħasbu li kienet sempliċement impossibbli. U mhux biss biddel ħajtu kompletament, iżda ħoloq wirt li biddel il-ħajja ta' eluf ta' nies madwar id-dinja. Robin Knox Johnston twieled fi xlokk ta' Londra biss 6 xhur qabel ma faqqat it-tieni gwerra dinjija. Wara ftit missierru ġie assenjat Liverpool għax-xogħol u b'hekk Sir Robin qatta snin bikrin tiegħu hemmhekk.
We were living up on the Wirral during the war, so I was looking down at the Dee, particularly as we got towards D-Day. There was a lot of activity, people practicing for the landings over beaches and that sort of thing. And so one got very interested, of course, small boy, what you expect, 5 years old, and all these chaps coming down with large bits of machinery. It's wildly exciting, and the boats and everything else. So by the age of 8, I'd basically decided I was going to sea.
Robin telaq mill-iskola waqt l-eżamijiet finali biex ikun jista' jsegwi l-ħolma tiegħu li jibda jbaħħar u ingħaqad man-Navy Ingliża bħala apprendista fejn tgħallem ibaħħar u gawda minn karriera ta' suċċess. Iżda meta kien fl-aħħar tal-20 tiegħu u ispira ruħu mill-baħħar famuż Ingliż Francis Chichester. Robin segwa l-istorja tiegħu hekk kif dak iż-żmien Chichester kien baħħar madwar id-dinja waħdu waqfa waħda biss l-Awstralja u b'hekk kien stabbilixxa rekord ġdid. Issa se nsegwu dak li qal ħabib kbir ta' Robin kif ukoll korrispondent tal-BBC dwar din il-kisba ta' Chichester.
I lived in Greenwich at that time. I just started working for the BBC. I joined the BBC in 1966, and Sir Francis Chichester came, of course, to Greenwich in his boat, and I think the Queen met him there, knighted him there. Francis Chichester was an established character. He was a famous sailor. Robin was a young man. Most of us had never heard of him or any of the other people that went on that round-the-world race in 1969. And Robin lifted himself out of the mass by his simple daring and ability and guts and drive.
Tul is-snin tiegħu meta kien apprendist man-Navy Ingliża, Knox sifer ħafna u xogħlu żammu ħafna l-bogħod mill-familja għal ħafna xhur.
I went to India when I was still an apprentice, my last year. Joined one of the company's ships going out east. Came home, took my second mate certificate, and you had a choice. I could stay on home line, ships running from the UK out to Africa and India, or I could go on Eastern Service, which was ships based out east, built in Britain, but never came home. And I decided I'd go on Eastern Service because the pay was better. I joined Walker in Karachi and went on the Gulf Run, where I spent the next 4 years, going from Bombay to Basra and back, and calling at all the ports in between.
It-tfajla tiegħu Sue kienet paċenzjuża u kien iżomma dejjem f'moħħu fil-vjaġġi twal tiegħu.
We grew up together. And, when she got to about 17, I was 19. I was, bloody good looking, that one. So my interest in her changed from the tomboy friend to more romantic. And we got married about 3 years later. Went out to India. So, she was 20, I was 22.
Waqt li huma kienu jgħixu l-Indja twildet bintom Sarah, iżda minħabba l-karriera tiegħu fin-Navy, Sue kienet spiss issib ruħha weħedha għal perjodi twal biex tieħu ħsieb it-tarbija tagħhom. Madankollu l-Indja kien il-post ta' twelid ta' idea waħda li kienet sa taffettwa ħajjithom kollha. Il-jott tiegħu issa famuż imsejjaħ Suhaili imbniet f'Bombay blużu ta' diżinn ibbażat fuq dajsa tas-salvataġġ Norveġġiża. Suhaili hija keċ tal-Bermuda b'żewġ arbli u hija biss 32 pied fit-tul. Tnejn minn sħabu wkoll uffiċjali fin-Navy ingħaqdu miegħu biex jibnu din id-dajsa, iżda malajr iddiżappuntaw u ma komplewx.
The three of us talking about what name to use. And Suhaili came to us because there's a star called Suhail. But Suhaili also has a number of meanings. It can mean girlfriend or best friend in Urdu. And my wife's name was Sue, so it seemed to me quite tactful to choose the name Suhaili. Financially, it was a bit tricky because the other two decided that was enough. They wanted to go out to Australia and New Zealand and marry their girlfriends. I didn't want to give up, and so I basically bought them out. We were living on next to nothing at the time. We were living on porridge for breakfast, bananas for lunch, 1 or 6 worth of curry for dinner, so got very slim, got away with losing weight.
F'dan iż-żmien il-familja ta' Robin iffaċċaw problemi ta' finanzi u l-pjanijiet tagħhom biex ibaħħar lejn ir-Renju Unit sfaxxaw. Kien żmien diffiċli fir-relazzjoni tagħhom u eventwalment tbiedu minn xulxin.
Well, she was worried because, there was quite a lot of disease, and Sarah was premature, about 5 weeks premature. So Sue was terrified if she got ill, she'd lose everything. So, she fed her up to the point she looked like Buddha. But she was always worried about her health. So she wasn't at all keen on coming on the boat. By this time I was committed financially to the boat. I couldn't get out of it. So that created frictions, which eventually ended with the splitting up. We never fought over Sarah. That was always, we always very civilized with each other over that. So anyway, I bought them out, I came home, took my master's ticket, went into the Navy for 5 months, went back out with my brother and a friend, finished the boat off, and we sailed for England, around the Cape. Got to Durban, we'd missed the season to go around the Cape, we'd run out of money anyway. So the next 3 months I was captain of a ship going up and down the South African coast, which was great fun. Earned enough money to buy some tins, and we decided we'd go from Cape Town to London non-stop. We'd gone long enough, we wanted to get home. So we did, it took us 77 days. But actually it was extremely useful. experience.
Il-kisba ta' Francis Chichester fl-1967 kienet baqgħet berren f'ras Robin li xi darba jagħmel l-istess.
I saw Chichester come home and thought, he's gone around the world single-handed with one stop. Leaves one thing to be done. And it just grew on me to the point where I realised I was going to have to do it. I wrote to 52 companies and said, I've got this great idea. I need £5,000 to do it. Will you sponsor me? And they all wrote back and said no. But I did get a £5 voucher out of Cadbury's, so it wasn't totally wasted.
L-idea ta' ċirkonavigazzjoni solo mingħajr waqfien kienet idea popolari għal dak iż-żmien u allura l-gazzetta Sunday Times ħolqot il-famuża Golden Globe Race u offrit 5,000 lira lir-rebbieħ li f'dak iż-żmien kien biżżejjed biex familja tixtri dar imdaqsa ta' proprjetà tagħhom.
The Sunday Times decided the race would start on the 31st of October. Myself, John Ridgway and Shea Bly said, well, we're not starting then. We're going to start in June. And they couldn't understand why we wanted to start in June. And the reason is, the one place you don't want to hang around in the winter is Cape Horn. If we start in midsummer here, we'll get off Cape Horn in midsummer in the Southern Hemisphere, which is a sensible time to be there. So all of us said, well, sorry, we're going in June. The Sunday Times, very sharp, they said, we won't be able to be in our race then. I don't know what the others who said, and I said, no, you're catching on fast. So they had to change the rules, which meant you could start from the 1st of June to the 31st of October. But then they thought, well, to encourage people to go fast, we'll put a money prize up. The person who gets round fastest, starting between those two dates. I never actually entered the Sunday Times Golden Globe race. They announced on my birthday in 1968 that I was an entrant, along with 3 others that they knew about at the time. But I never actually entered.
Lura fir-Renju Unit u fil-bżonn ta' flus reġa' ngħaqad mal-Merchant Navy filwaqt li baqa' jiffoka wkoll fuq il-pjanijiet tiegħu u jipprepara l-akbar sfida ta' ħajtu tellieqa fit-tul. Vjaġġi bil-baħar jistgħu jkunu mimlijin periklu u inċertezza, speċjalment meta tkun waħdek fl-oċeani l-kbar tad-dinja. Il-karriera tal-baħri Alex Thompson bdiet wara li Robin ħatru bħala l-iżgħar skipper fil-Clipper Race tal-1998 meta Alex kellu biss 25 sena. Illum il-ġurnata Alex Thompson huwa rikonoxxut bħala wieħed mill-istilla ewlenin fl-isport tat-tbaħħir.
Robin was the person who took the risk and the responsibility for me to start this whole process. Maybe he recognized something in me or I don't know, but he gave me an opportunity that I don't think most people would have done. And the Clipper Around the World race gave me the opportunity to show what my capability was. And if Robin hadn't taken me on the trial, I wouldn't have got a job with Clipper. If I hadn't got a job with Clipper, I wouldn't have won the Clipper Around the World race in 98-99, and I would not have met Sir Keith Mills. So my life would be completely different now if it wasn't for Robin. When you're out on the ocean racing in these solo races, whether it be non-stop or stopping, I love it. I mean, everybody would feel differently about it, but for me, I love the feeling, the freedom. I love, that humbling feeling you have from being out there in a big ocean and being such a small, tiny person. But I think we all feel differently about it. We can feel isolated, we can feel lonely, we can feel stress from the risk. And as time goes on, the technology gets better, that gets easier. So back in 1968, 1969, how would you know it was going to come? As far as I was aware, they'd only just worked out that the Earth was round, hadn't they?
Dika Farja l-ewwel mara li baħret bla waqfien madwar id-dinja waħedha. Ħani semgħu dak li kellha xi tajt, hekk kif hi waħda minn dawk il-persuni li taf wis tajjeb dak li hemm bżonn biex wieħed ilesti ċirkonavigazzjoni waħdu.
There's no other event that goes on for as long as it does as sailing around the world. And to do that day in, day out, no matter what's going on, shows a huge level of strength. Ultimately, you have to remember why you're out there. And for me, I absolutely love it. It's the most hostile environment, but it's also some of the best sailing you do. And I think it's that reason why we all keep going back out there, is because we love it. We love the fact that we have endless horizons for sunrises and sunsets. We see nature in its natural environment. We see the strength and the power of Mother Nature definitely telling us she's in charge. and we're trying to harness this power and make it work for ourselves.
The more I heard about it, the more I understood the enormous danger and complexity of what he did. And you could only imagine the drive that kept him going. I just don't think there's anything very much in the years that have followed that to match that achievement. I think it was absolutely magnificent.
Robin kien wieħed mid-9 baħrin li bdew it-tellieqa tal-Golden Globe Race fl-1968 fuq rotta jibsa u imprevedibbli. Ir-rotta ħaditu mill-biċċ tal-Ingilterra dritt l-isfel fl-Atlantiku, dar mal-Afrika t'isfel imbagħad tal-Oċean ta' nofsinhar lejn l-Awstralja, New Zealand, kif ukoll il-famuża Cape Horn. Idur mal-ponta tal-Amerika t'isfel u mbagħad triq kollha lura fl-Atlantiku. Francis Chichester kien temm dan il-vjaġġ tiegħu f'9 xhur b'waqfa waħda, però kien dejjem baqa' dubju jekk verament il-bniedem seta' jlaħħaq mal-istress li ġġib din it-tip ta' tellieqa b'rotta bla waqfien u totalment waħdu.
I wanted sponsorship so I could build a much bigger boat, faster boat. I wanted to build a 56-footer, which Colin Moody did design for me, and I needed about 2,500–3,000 to build her out of steel. And the rest of the money would have gone on things like radios and food and stuff. That's why I needed £5,000. Anyway, I couldn't raise it, so I got Suhaili. I was trying to sell her, but no one was interested, so I thought, well, I've got a boat, I'll take that. But I was going, I mean, there was no argument about it.
Robin iffoka totalment fuq din it-tiġrija. Kien hemm 9 persuni oħra lesti għal din it-tiġrija bil-persuna favorita tkun Bernard Matisse minn Franza. Sfortunatament Robin kien meqjus bħala l-underdog mill-medja, iżda din ma qatatlux qalbu.
I didn't think I was the underdog at all. I mean, I thought, actually, I'm probably one of the best prepared here. I know this boat inside out. I'm a professional seaman. I'm a navigator by profession. I'm better prepared for this voyage than anyone, probably except Matessier. So the comments about me being the underdog really were just an annoyance. The media, particularly the Sunday Times, wrote me off completely. But, you know, they didn't delve into it. They didn't stop and think. The editor of Yachting World did. He looked at it and said, hang on, what this chap's done. He's pretty experienced.
Fl-14 ta' Ġunju tal-1968, Robin telaq minn Falmouth ġewwa Cornwall fuq dan il-vjaġġ li kien destinat li jbiddillu ħajtu kif ukoll dik ta' ħafna oħrajn. Il-familja tiegħu kienet hemm biex jaraw jitlaq. Ħan nisimgħu lil ħuħ iż-żgħir jirrakkonta dak li jiftakar ta' dakinhar ta' tluq.
My father's a very emotional man, and immensely proud of what he was trying to do, but very scared, I think. My mother just kept a brave face, but I think it was tough for them, very tough.
I don't remember what the words are. I remember looking at my mother's face. It was very drawn. I didn't like that. And Dad was looking a bit worried. My brother Mike was there as well. And, but you know, you're going to have that moment, aren't you? You're going to have to go through that moment. I mean, it's going to be there, whatever you do. At some point, I've got to head out. So, frankly, the sooner I get out to sea and I can put those thoughts behind me, the better, and focus on the job in hand.
I mean, it's their eldest son going to do this incredible adventure. And they, you know, I remember that evening after he'd gone, it was pretty quiet. It wasn't a celebration or anything like that. It was really a really quiet time. I think probably it dawned on me, you know, am I going to see you again?
Id-9 baħħara l-kol telqu fuq il-jottijiet żgħar tagħhom il-barra fl-ikbar oċeani tad-dinja waħedhom u bla waqfien. Minn dik l-ewwel tellieqa 50 sena ilu, il-jottijiet saru ikbar b'avanzi kbar fil-veloċità kif ukoll titjib fit-teknoloġija. tbaħħar madwar id-dinja waħdek tibqa' sfida mill-akbar, iżda dan it-tip ta' tlielaq baqgħu jsiru u r-rekords baqgħu jinkisbu. Fl-2018 il-Franċiż François Gabard kiseb rekord ġdid ta' 42 ġurnata, 16 siegħa, 40 minuta u 35 sekonda fuq trimaran ta' 100 pied. Bejn il-ħin li għamel Sir Robin u dan ir-rekord ta' Gabard 50 sena wara, hemm 8 xhur differenza apparti l-għodda u t-teknoloġija li seta' tintuża.
The radio used to be here, the Marconi Kestrel, and that's the only communication I had. I mean, nowadays I've got a VHF, I've got a direction finder, didn't have that in those days, which also gives me long wave so I can get weather forecasts. Obviously you've got a clock, you've got a barometer, and they're new, but the Guinness one is the one that was given me by the pub in Down before I set sail, and frankly was absolutely invaluable. It's the only scientific instrument I had on board, apart from the sextant, and absolutely vital information to let me know when this depression was coming through.
Nowadays I have 2 different types of satellite phones. I've got a tracker, I've got probably 10 GPSs, 5 other different emergency devices. You know, I can be in contact all the time. If I want to video conference my kid at school, in theory I could. I'd like to think today you don't necessarily feel lonely, but you could feel isolated. Whereas back when Robin did it, obviously there was no communication, so you'd have the loneliness and the isolation.
People forget that without satellites, there's no GPS. We didn't have that. What we have is a sextant, which was used for measuring the height of a body, a celestial body above the horizon, and the time. And armed with that information, we could then work out a position line. It's just a line. If you take a sight of the sun in the morning, your line is going to be perpendicular to the bearing of the sun. So my line now is actually, if I get it right, a line of longitude. I then wait till midday when the sun's at its maximum height, and I take that reading. That's a much simpler calculation, and that will give me a latitude. In between taking those 2 sites and cross it with the latitude, I've got a fix. And that's how we used to navigate, exactly the same way as Captain Cook did 250 years ago.
U dan kien kollox għall-programm ta' din il-ġimgħa, iżda l-istorja ta' Sir Robin Knox Johnston tkompli l-ġimgħa d-dieħla b'iktar intervisti u avventuri mill-ħajja ta' suċċess u ispirazzjoni tiegħu. Titilfuħx.